Hey everyone, Dr. Nick of Atlanta Physical Therapy here with Dr. Jake Reynolds from Functionize Health and Physical Therapy. We are in their gym right now. We're going to be going over some golf pointers. So Jake is an expert in golf and swimming, but today we decided that we're going to talk about golf. It just happens to be something that I don't know a whole lot about. I wanted to learn more of, and Dr. Jake has been kind enough to have me over here. So Jake, can you give us a little bit of an intro about yourself?
Totally. So like Nick said, my name is Jake Reynolds. I am a doctor of physical therapy. Have been practicing here in Atlanta for 5-6 years now. And like you said, really enjoy treating swimmers, golfers, and at first, my first passion was swimming. That's kind of where I started. I grew up swimming in high school, college, did all that, and never really developed a hand-eye coordination sport or anything like that. And golf was always something I was really interested in, but it was always so intimidating. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know the etiquette. I felt like if I was going to go play around a golf that I'd be slowing people down. And it just was one of those things I wasn't really comfortable with. Until one time my brother-in-law invited me out to play golf, and he said, hey, let's go do this. And I was really kind of nervous and scared about it, and I played one round with him, and I loved it. On top of that, at the same time, I was in a clinic that literally had a golf training facility adjacent to it. We shared a wall with him. And it's not just like your run-of-the-mill golf training facility. It was one of the top 100 golf pros in the world was there, treating and not treating but coaching golfers of all calibers, including highest level golfers. So we would see these names coming through into our physical therapy space, into the golf space, people that I'd see on TV. And a lot of these people were individuals that would be treated in my clinic, and I didn't know the first thing about golf. And sometimes they would put these people on my schedule, and I'd sit there and have to kind of fake my way through, oh, okay, so I know internal rotation, your hip's important, but what do we actually do about this? So that kind of led me to pursue the Titleist Performance Institute, which is a standardized way of evaluating and treating golfers, and it helps me speak the language of golf. So that's kind of where I am. I've been doing that for a while. I now have a space at a country club where we have multiple practitioners in there, and we treat golfers of all levels there as well. So that's kind of where I am with that.
That's awesome. And Is speaking the language of golf anything like Spanish? Can you say that you're bilingual now?
I would say I am I could speak bastardized Spanish if that was the case.
Yeah, right. I love that. That's awesome. Well, and it's really cool that you kind of went into it a lot. So what he was mentioning is so true. When we start out as physical therapists, a lot of times we are thrown in by these other companies the situation that we don't really know. But the thing that usually does happen that or sometimes happen, not always actually. I shouldn't say that, but the thing that sometimes happened that's so beautiful that Jake did is that he really ran with it. He said, I don't know about this. Mm-hmm. I'm not very good at it, even on the green.
Yeah.
And I want to learn more on how to help these people. I think there's a population of people. I'm going to become the best at it. And you mentioned say it one more time, the institute was...
So it's the Titleist Performance Institute. So Titleist is a golf club and golf ball manufacturer. And so what they did years ago is they said, we want to sell more golf balls. We want to sell more golf clubs. And the easiest way to sell more of those products is not to attract new people to the sport, because the barrier to entry, again, like I said, is intimidating. So it's harder to get somebody to want to play golf than it is to keep the same people who are playing golf in golf. So they said, how do we keep selling product to the same people? We need to extend their careers. We need to extend the longevity of those golfers. So what they did is they got a panel of physical therapists, doctors, chiropractors, sports medicine individuals, golf coaches, and they said, what are the most important movements that a golfer needs to do? And what they did, and they took thousands of participants and looked at data points on, okay, what does your external rotation look like? And not only that, they split it into groups of professionals and amateurs. And they looked at, all these professionals who can swing a golf club perfectly. There's a lot of variation, but they can all do the movements and all generally end up the same. They can all do these movements without fail. Whereas when you look at the amateurs, they can't do these movements, or only half of them can do these movements. And so it's how do we get the amateur golfers to be more like the professionals from an anatomical standpoint. So we're not talking about a swing kinematics and things like that. We're talking simple things. Can you internally rotate your hip? Can you rotate your shoulder? Can you disassociate your thorax from your body? And so we look at those things, and that helps us as an evaluator objectively see, okay, you can't do these movements, or you can do these movements, and here's what might happen in your swing if you can't. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I think there's a big connection, or not connection, but it's very similar to when we look at someone's walking.
Totally.
It sounds like they took, the biomechanics, so the function that happens in your body with these swings, and broke it down in a similar way that you might see in a biomechanics lab, where they look at walking and gait mechanics.
Totally.
So that is really cool that they did that it's broken down into something almost, it's obviously very complex, but something simple and digestible for the therapist to translate and pass on to the athlete.
Yeah, and to make it meaningful for the athlete. I'll get a lot of people who come in, and so what the Titleist Performance Institute does is it trains you in its evaluation process. And so what they do is they literally give you a software on an iPad, or you can do it on your mobile device, and it has 16 movements that you take the person through. And like I said, one of the things is just simply looking at, like, can you externally rotate in a standing position and in a golf position? And they say, if you can't, right, you check on the screen, yes or no, you can't do it. And you take them through all these movements and you score them. And then at the end, it takes those movements and it says, okay, you can't do these movements. So like I said earlier, this is the thing you might expect in your golf swing. And I have people all the time say, that's exactly what happens. Every time I swing the ball or swing the club, my ball ends up going right at the target. And you could say, yeah, that's because you're not getting your hips through, right? So things like that. But what it does in those aha moments for the client is my golf coach or my golf pro or whoever has been telling me, turn your hips, turn your hips, turn your hips. And I just found out today that physically I cannot. And so they've been wanting me to do something that is anatomically not an option for me. And so then my job as the therapist is to look at, okay, is this something, an anatomical feature that is not fixable? Or is it something that we can indeed, through exercise or hands-on work, can we start to move the needle a little bit to give them more range of motion? Or do we need to communicate with their coach and say, hey, this is not going to happen, so you guys need to come up with a strategy on how he can achieve, or he or she can achieve those movements in spite of not having that anatomy. Yeah. So there's one golfer in particular, Jon Rahm, who's a top 5 golfer in the world, who every single time, and you'll hear announcers, you will hear people talk about, I'm just going to go through,
absolutely.
A typical backswing on the swing. You're going to see guys get the club way behind their head. Jon Rahm's backswing stops right about here because he has a fused ankle. And so what they do is they kind of tweak his stance, and they say, yeah, keep the backswing short so that you don't have to throw off your mechanics through that ankle. And so that's what we're talking about is, can we fix the anatomy, or do we need to compensate around the swing?
That's awesome. And you know what? I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of people don't realize, especially if I'm sure you've had people come in, they'll maybe be working with someone like a personal trainer who tells them that they need to do a deeper squat, or they need to work on their internal rotation of their hips. But the bony structure, it's not necessarily that their ligaments are tight from not moving too much, or their tendons or the muscles, but the bony structure physically will not structurally allow it to happen.
Yep.
So it sounds like you guys are honing in on that, identifying if that is the case, and working around it, which is great. So that way you can compensate in a safe way, because compensation is typically known as not being good, but that's if it's the wrong type of compensation.
Totally.
And you guys are figuring out what types of compensations are actually going to save people.
Exactly. So you'll have a lot of people who operate from this rigid frame of mind because I've watched a zillion YouTube videos, or my coach says my feet have to be set here, but I can't get around my hip. And so at that point I say, forget about what the constructs tell you. Your body's not going to do that. So let's open up your hip. I know it's not ideal, but for you, it's going to be more ideal. And that's it. And so coming with the knowledge of saying, okay, what is like correct, right, so to speak,
right,
and then where can we deviate away from that ideal to fit this person's anatomy? And so that's really where having that strong frame of mind and understanding of what should the correct thing be, and then combine that with the knowledge that you and I have as a practitioner to know, okay, I'm feeling this hip, it's not going to move, right? And so that's the beauty of this evaluation is that it gives me enough of an understanding of how a golf swing should happen, enough of an understanding of how we create efficiency and what are the movements that needs to happen, and then fuse that with our clinical background. And this TPI information isn't just for physical therapists, physicians, personal trainers. So when I took my class with them, it was a whole room. We had golf pros, physicians, chiropractors, PTs, personal trainers. And one of their whole things is that they want to make this a three-way kind of connection, which is the clinician, the player, and the coach. We all three have the same understanding and are speaking the same language. That way I can then take information that I'm getting from that evaluation and tell the coach, like, hey, here's what I found, here's what I think, do with this information, because you know way more about the swing than I ever will. And so I should say that my job with my golfers is to not fix their swing. I tell them that off from the jump. I'm not going to tweak your swing, because golfers and golf pros are pretty protective over that, right? We don't want to start messing with that. So I just say,
their ego.
Yeah, exactly. So I just say, my job isn't to fix your swing. My job is to give you the platform so that you can do the swing that you want to do. And then same with the golf pro. I say, okay, here's the information. Here's what's not going to happen. You guys do the rest, right?
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? You mentioned that you're working with all these different disciplines,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really impactful thing that they do in hospitals. It's called the interdisciplinary process.
Yep.
So you're taking something that's worked so well in a much, we'll say, more established institution, hospitals, and has worked to save so many lives, and you're bringing it and using it in the outpatient setting to
Right.
get the absolute best results for
Yep.
these people.
And that's the thing is golfers, people who are really into a sport are really into a sport. And golfers are even probably at the craziest end of the spectrum, that they will do whatever it takes.
They're that crazy.
Yeah, you're crazy. So this is kind of a funny story. So they did an actual research study where they had a room of 100 people, and they split them into groups of 50. And they said, Group A, you guys are going to live, we're going to guarantee you guys are going to live 10 years longer than Group B. Group B, we're going to guarantee that you guys are going to drive the ball 10 yards further than Group A. You can switch groups, decide which group you want to be in. 80% of participants chose 10 extra yards off the tee box than 10 more quality years of life.
Oh my gosh.
Golfers are a little crazy. And so, but that also means that they are into their sport, and they want the communication, they want the education, and they want their people around them speaking the same language. And so, just like you said, that interdisciplinary approach is so important to quality care. I mean, as you know, in a hospital, that has to happen. When it comes to working in an outpatient setting and working with athletes, the same principles hold true. If we want to get the best for our people, we got to be able to bring everyone together.
That's awesome. It is poetic to hear that for something like this. And I'm going to switch gears for a second here.
Sure.
I wanted to know what, for the audience, what types of, because we talk about prevention, which is
Sure.
the absolute gold standard.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they didn't get into you in time. What are the types of injuries that golfers tend to see?
Sure. So probably the two biggest is going to be back and shoulder. And probably even more so than shoulder is back. Probably like most outpatient issues, the spine is really where most people see those issues. And there's a variety of reasons that golfers see those issues. And what I should say is when we kind of are evaluating an injury whether it be a golf-related injury through TPI or just in general in the clinic. Like physical therapists, we do not just zero in on the one body region that ails them.
Right.
We look at the system, we look at how things move. And so one of the things I always talk to my golfers about is, if we look at human anatomy, and we're really cool, like the way we're designed is so cool. We are this perfect alternating pattern of stability and mobility, right? If we started at the foot's got an arch, it's stable. You go one joint up to the ankle moves, it's stable. The knee pretty much moves forward, backward, it's stable. The hip moves in 6 degrees of freedom, it's mobile. Lumbar spine stable, thoracic spine mobile, right? This is a perfect pattern throughout the body. And so oftentimes when somebody's coming in with a back issue, then I'm saying, okay, we are trying to get too much mobility out of a stable segment. So let me look at the hip, let me look at thoracic spine. So normally when it's a back issue, it's not a back issue. It's a hip or a thoracic issue. Because golf is such a rotational sport, lumbar spine, as you know, the way that the lumbar spine is constructed is that it is a forward-backward mover. It has some rotation, but not much. And so when we're trying to rotate in our swing, and we're not getting that from the hip, most guys, we have stiff hips. I don't see as much back pain in my female golfers as much as I do in the male golfers, and mostly it's because of the hips. The other part is the thoracic spine. That's not normally as much of an anatomical block as it is a motor control issue. People don't know how to disassociate. And so I work with people on that.
Okay. And in my limited knowledge of golf injuries that will occur, I had been taught that people tend to, well, and I've also seen a little bit, that when people golf, usually it is actually the backward, so you drive forward, so if I'm a righty, I drive to the left, but the right side on most people tend to hurt. Can you explain why that is?
That's exactly right. And so ordinarily, and I'll just demonstrate it because it's probably easier to do this, is ordinarily, and what we would call this feature is a reverse spine angle. So if I go into my golf swing, if I'm a right-handed golfer and I go into my backswing, what you see in a reverse spine angle, if the target is over there, you'll see the head and the body move toward the target. And this oftentimes is because we don't have the hip rotation or we don't have the thoracic rotation. So if I can't get here, right, oftentimes in order to get my club on plane, I'm going to tilt my body that way. Okay. And so the problem with that is that as you go through the downswing, we go into rapid hyperextension to try to create that rotation. Okay. So it's more of a side bend and rotation issue than it is a purely rotational swing. And so oftentimes with those people, again, I'm looking at hip, thoracic spine, getting us away from this motor control pattern, this kind of ingrained pattern that we now have to push our body toward the target. So you're exactly right. Those types of people will experience symptoms primarily on the opposite side of where the target is.
Okay. Yeah, that is really interesting because it's definitely, I mean, from when I first learned it and I was an amateur myself, it just in anatomy, it made no sense. Like, oh yeah, for sure, the side that's facing, but you're right. Yeah. Because I mean that rapid, that slamming down for people don't know exactly how the anatomy works. There's there are these little joints on either side, and when you are swinging from being tilted forward to back to the other side, it's slamming down on these joints, and they're hard. They're two bones hitting each other. So
totally,
that is really interesting. And so people can come in to see you here. How if someone wanted to come see you, Dr. Jake,
totally,
what would they do? Like how would they call you? Would they send a bat signal? Carrier pigeon?
Bat signal works. I don't answer on weekends. But no. So yeah, call the office. 404-907-4196. Can't believe I just remembered that. Or you can email me directly at jake@functionizehealth.com and just say, hey, I'm interested in a TPI evaluation, or I'm a golfer and I've got these issues. Can you help me work through them? And this is, I would say, probably anywhere from 20 to 25% of my clientele are those people, and they're not all pros. I've helped a handful of those individuals in the past, but most of the people that I work with are just the amateur golfer. And to me, it doesn't matter if you're literally just wanting to learn, or if you've been playing for 40 years and you want to kind of work on cleaning things up. Again, my job is to give you the platform, the education, the anatomical opportunity to do the sport that you love to do, right? And that's really my main prerogative, is get you out there, right? I very rarely do I tell people stop playing. A lot of people think, oh, I go to PT, they're going to tell me don't do that. I'm going to say no. We need to do this, and if it's something really serious, then I'm going to say, okay, work on your short game. Let's stay off of the long drives for a little bit. Let's get that short game strong. So more often than not, we're just tweaking around what you're already doing. I'm just giving you tools to run with. So it's really more of a partnership than it is a me telling you what to do type of thing.
Happy Gilmore had a hard time with the short game, I remember.
He did, yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
Should have come
Yeah.
here. Awesome. And we're here in the city of Decatur. You guys have your other location in
Dunwoody. So
awesome.
we have 3 locations. We're here in downtown Decatur. We're opening our flagship location in Dunwoody. And then I am also out at Druid Hills Golf Club. That is a place where you have to be a member in order to see us. But if you are a Druid Hills member and you didn't know you had physical therapy at the club, now you know.
Now you know. You heard it here first.
Yep.
I really do appreciate your time. Thank you for having me
Absolutely.
in your clinic. I know you guys are super busy, offering a really awesome service here. I am honored to now be in Decatur, working so closely to you guys. And to say thank you, I got a gift.
Gator Golf. One of my all-time favorites.
So, did you play it growing up?
We had, I had a friend who had one, that we would play in his upstairs room.
That's why you weren't into golf until you got into PT
exactly,
school.
yeah.
So we got it set up. We're gonna wrap it up here, everyone. Thank you. I actually opened it up so it was ready for us to play. Hopefully, Dr. Jake's short game.
We're gonna see
been
if
working
it's
on.
actually.
If it actually works.
Yes.
Both the Gator Golf and your program.
The proof is in the pudding here, folks. Let's see. There it is.
Boom! Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Jake Reynolds.